This is Florence fennel. Now, Florence fennel can be quite tricky to get right, certainly to get good, because it's one of those plants that is very sensitive to changes in condition, whether it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, and that's at almost every stage of its growth. And it responds to those stresses by bolting. And when it bolts, it stops making this fleshy base to its leaves, and you get a long stem and eventually a flower, and that's it. Now, this year, despite being so hot and dry all summer, it's actually not been bad. It's not as big as the stuff that you would expect to buy, but those can be a little bit watery. These have a really lovely, intense aniseedy taste. In this bed, I've got sweet corn, and I've underplanted it with beetroot. Now, I haven't harvested any yet, so let's just take one out and see. What I've used is a variety called Burpee's Golden. And you can see it's got this lovely sort of apricot colour underneath. Obviously, they can stay in the ground, and they will get bigger as we go into winter and even into next spring. And of course, what that means is that this is the permanent crop, and the sweet corn is the temporary crop. Normally, it's the other way around. So I'm happy with those. And it was an experiment, because underplanting sweet corn with beetroot is not something you're going to find in any gardening textbook. And actually, it's worked really well. The sweet corn itself is ready for harvest. Again, this summer, because it's been so hot and dry, they're much shorter than normal. And except for one, there's only one cob per plant, whereas normally there'll be at least 2, if not 3. You know that sweet corn is ready to harvest when the tassel, the flower head, hangs down and is brown. And when you harvest it, just hold the stem and just lower it down, and it should just break off in your hand. And having done that, the important thing is take it to the kitchen and eat it, because that lovely sweetness is going to disappear, certainly in hours and almost in minutes. So take it and eat it straight away. Now, coming up on today's programme, Toby immerses himself in a garden in Wiltshire, full of beauty and surprising design.
What I love is to create intrigue, that feeling of life. That's, to me, the secret sauce.
We meet a self-taught gardener who has been on a personal journey as she has transformed her allotment.
Sometimes I don't believe that I've done all of this, and that all of this came from seeds and hard work. And I can honestly say that gardening has changed my life.
Frances discovers how pioneering technology is creating beautiful borders for pollinators.
So Daisy, tell me about this project. It's not really gardening, it's an artwork for insects. So once you choose your garden conditions, you press Create My Garden, and then it will give you a planting plan, and then you get ready to go.
And we visit a garden in North Somerset with water and wildlife at its heart.
Really, my garden has to thrive on benign neglect. What's lovely about that is it feels like it's reclaiming the space, like it's a patch of nature. We're kind of embracing the fact that the garden is coming back to its wilder state.
This is the writing garden, and I confess it's been a bit neglected this summer. There are 2 reasons for that. The first and main reason is that we've put up a replacement writing shed. In fact, we've relocated the dog house from my RHS Chelsea flower show garden, and we're going to use it as a new potting shed. Now, getting the building here has created quite a lot of mess, but also it's now created the opportunity for some extra planting and replanting, because effectively I have a new little border here. And I've got some plants that I've been hanging on to all summer. I was going to plant them in June, but it was far too hot and dry. Right, I'm going to start with an Astrantia. This is Astrantia shaggy. And you can see actually there's some white flowers on there, little touch of pink inside. It's a woodland plant, it likes the shade, and it's a really good doer in this garden. Now, what I have here doesn't look like much, but this is cranberry cordifolia. It's a big plant with big foliage and a wonderful froth of small white flowers. It doesn't like being too dry, and it likes good drainage. Well, the dry I can't really deal with, and the drainage is not brilliant, but it's worth giving a go. And the important thing is to get it in the ground this time of year. The critical thing is that now is a really good time to plant. You get enough moisture, the soil is still warm, the roots will grow, particularly perennial shrubs and trees, and then the tops, which will stay dormant, are not making demands on the roots. So when we come to next spring, they're in a better position to access water and nutrients. And I think that's the key to coping with drought. Now, this is a white valerian. I think it's magnificent, perfect here for the writing garden, because again, it's light, it's frothy. Will reach up about 5 foot tall and flower from May and into June. I've got a couple of helichrysum. Normally, I use this in pots as a spiller. It hangs down this cascade of lovely, small, glaucous leaves. I thought they'd make a really nice ground cover. Now, the only slight problem with the helichrysum is not fully hardy. It's fine to about -5. And if we have a mild winter, it'll survive. So it's a bit of a gamble putting it in, but we'll give it a go. I'm going to put that there. Once you're happy with the positions, get them in the ground. I added a lot of compost to this, worked it in to give the soil a bit of a boost. I always feel that planting is the reward, the gift that you receive from preparing everything and gathering the plants and placing them. This is the bit that I love most. And then, of course, water after you've planted. We're off to Wiltshire now to join Toby, who is visiting a garden that has been created fairly recently on a grand and truly creative scale.
Cley House and its 15-acre garden is set just below Cley Hill in rural Wiltshire. And you know, from up there, this place would look like your regular English country garden, divided into rooms. But it's so much more than that. This is a place of creativity, colour and so much thought. And it's also a perfect example that sometimes when garden building, 2 heads are better than 1. The house and garden date back to the 18th century, but when Keith Johnson and his husband Glenn became the custodians, there wasn't a flower in sight. So how long have you been here, Keith?
So we've been here almost 8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
What was it like when you first arrived?
And it was a much loved place. It was a place that just needed to be woken up and rediscovered. For many, many years I was in the retail world. What I love is to create intrigue, and you want to be drawn to the next thing. So you've got to have highs and lows, and it's the same in a garden. I bring architectural elements into the garden. I bring objects, which is something I understand. I just love to keep that feeling of life. That's, to me, the secret sauce.
As I make my way through the walled garden, I can instantly see Keith's flair for design, with the embellished fruit cage and decorative paths running through the kitchen garden. But the abundant planting is the work of head gardener Joe Downs. Joe, The magic runs deep in this place, doesn't it? Incredible garden.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
Did you design it and lay it out?
It's been a really organic process. Keith has definitely been instrumental in his vision. He wanted the idea for the pathways and to separate the garden up into sections. So we have 2 vegetable areas, 2 cut flower areas, a rose garden, a herb garden, and a little sort of mini orchard at the end. I view the garden very much as nature, so it's alive. I mean, my background is also ecology, improving the biodiversity.
Was the soil in good heart when you arrived here?
I didn't see one worm, one slug, one snail. A lot of compost needed to be brought in because we just didn't have any here at all to work with. So we've literally started from scratch. And now we have wildlife galore. We did have a wasp infestation earlier this year, but we prefer to discourage or distract or deter rather than destroy. And Ree, one of our gardeners here, she came up with the idea of these fake wasps' nests that obviously because wasps are territorial, it deters them, and it's worked a treat.
So what's it like collaborating with Keith?
This mixture of myself, Keith, and the girls who work here, we all have this really fun time just creating all these different areas and coming up with new ideas.
Well, the alchemy's working, Jo.
Totally, and it's great, and it really is rewarding.
If you want to bring in beneficial wildlife and bees to your kitchen garden, well, you need flowers. And they traditionally go around the edge of the beds. You can either go low and flowery with something like Salvia nacvinda, used to great effect here. Beautiful scented foliage, smells of black currants, and blooms from May right through till the frosts. Or you go tall and airy. Now, the classic tall and airy plant is Verbena bonariensis because its wiry stems don't cast a shadow. But what about this? Scabious moondance. I mean, the flowers have a glowing quality. They're like they're lit within. Like the grey foliage as well, and the fact that the blooms go right to the bottom of the plant. And that means it hides, well, the ugly legs of taller plants behind. This is the Jubilee Garden, and it gives an appreciation of Keith and Jo's ability to curate and bring materials and plants together. With climate change in mind, Jo has brought in drought-tolerant plants that survive dry conditions. Erigeron carvinskianus, flowers and flowers all through the year, drops seeds into the cracks and looks after itself. And there are herbs. There's golden marjoram, adored by the bees, as is the Armeria maritima, or thrift to you and me. Look at that, beautiful. Cleverly, Keith has used different tricks to age the place, make it look like it's been here forever. At ground level, the paving, well, it just looks wonderful. And this mix of sizes, it gives the whole place the look as if it's just been revealed by an archaeologist's trowel. An essential ingredient of any English country garden is the lawn. But I was not expecting this. I've never seen anything like it, and I love it. What a fresh approach to what would otherwise be a boring bit of grass. And yeah, it's very much of the place. These lumps and bumps echo the distant hills, and also the yew hedge. It's like a beast with its summer coat on. Yeah, it's molting at the moment, but imagine what it looks like when it all greens up in the autumn. And apparently it wasn't easy to build. It took a couple years to get right, not only to sculpt the ground, but also to sow the grass, because you can imagine, you put the seed down on the top of the slope, it rains, and all the kernels head to the bottom. But that's Keith all over. Does something new and something fresh. This place is so full of life, vitality. And gardens, of course, aren't just about plants. They're about people. And Keith, with his risk-taking, his love of trying something new, and Jo with a love of the wild and the way she brings nature into everything she does. And the two together, wow, it creates a wonderful recipe, or as Keith himself might say, the secret sauce.
I always love seeing gardens that are made on a heroic scale, because big ideas can spark something that can be applied to all kinds of spaces. Now, I wonder if they have the same problem as I do, because all along here, by the greenhouse, half the cold frames, up by the top greenhouse, I have got a mixture of plants that have either been here far too long or I've never quite found a place for. Lots of cuttings, things I've divided, things I've grown from seed, maybe the odd thing I've been given. And the really important point is that now, and over the next month, is a really good time just to take stock. For example, I came across this. I'd forgotten I had this, to be honest. This is a hydrangea quercifolia. Fantastic plant, and it wasn't very well at all. Well, I want to plant that out, and I now have somewhere to plant things like this out, but not into their final position, because that's really the root of the problem. Things like cuttings are very small. Put them in a border, and they just get swamped. But if you can grow them on somewhere, so then when you plant them out, they're a decent size, then you can use them as part of the garden display. But you have to have somewhere to grow them on, and now I have. Now, this is one of the big changes that I've made this summer. If you remember, there used to be a pond here, but it developed a terrible leak. And at the same time, this pond never worked terribly well for wildlife. At least the other pond we've got has been fantastic for wildlife and still is. So rather than remake this pond, I thought, well, okay, we'll focus our attention there. And what I really desperately need is a nursery bed, somewhere where you grow on plants until they're ready to be planted out. What I am most interested in at the moment are things like these Philadelphus. Now, I took these as cuttings last year. So, for example, I'm going to put these all out in a row like this. Means I can weed around them. There's room for them to develop into small plants. Okay, let's get these in the ground. Just by planting them out, apart from anything else, I'm giving them a new lease of life. And you don't have to keep watering the pots, and you don't have to keep potting them on when they run out of space. And if you don't have any space, well, then you just have to pot on. When it gets to this stage, put them into a bigger pot, and then they can grow out and grow a bit bigger and certainly grow healthier. So I'm giving them plenty of room, and I'm reckoning that these should be ready to plant into the garden in about a year's time. I'm very happy with the changes we've got here. We've gone from a pond which, quite frankly, was a failure. And what we've put in its place is somewhere we can grow on lots of plants and add to the diversity of the garden to encourage even more wildlife to come in. Now, we're going to join Sophia Gray on her allotment, where she has made real transformations, and in the process, made transformations to her own life as well.
The thing that got me hooked on gardening was the fact that you can make something so beautiful out of so little. And if you told me 10 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I absolutely wouldn't have believed you. I'm Sophia and we're in my allotment in Swindon where I grow cut flowers. And we're close to the M4 motorway, so there's a bit of traffic noise, but this site is set in a protected wildlife area. I've been growing for about 4 years now. I started gardening on maternity leave because I was looking for a hobby that I could do from home. I didn't know what to do when I started. I remember looking at seed packets, not really believing that I'd ever be able to grow anything like that. When I first started sowing seeds, it felt almost like magic to pour these things out of a little paper packet into some mud, put a bit of water on it, and a couple of months later, you'd have amazing flowers. I've always loved flowers. I'm the kind of person who has cut flowers in the house whenever possible. And when I was sort of shopping for seeds in those early days, it was almost like a light bulb moment when suddenly I realised that, you know, people grow their own cut flowers and maybe that's something I could do myself. So here it is, this is my plot. It is in full bloom. I'm feeling really proud of how it's looking this year. This beautiful flower is Cupid's Dart. It's a perennial plant, and this particular one is in its second year. I really love the colour of it and how floaty it is. It brings some movement to arrangements, and it's got that lovely papery texture. So this is the first season for me growing in a polytunnel. I really feel like people have been keeping a secret from me about how much easier it is to grow under cover. This annual phlox has got some beautiful stem length that will make it perfect for arrangements and bouquets. And then also the zinnias over here, which absolutely love the heat of the polytunnel. The more that I started growing flowers and really enjoying having them in my home and gifting them to friends, I began to think about and explore flower farming as a future career. I am a social worker. I've had the privilege of working with children and families for over 10 years now. The flowers are something that I do alongside social work in my spare time. Eventually, I'd like to combine both of those passions. My long-term goal would be setting up a social enterprise that supported children and young people to access horticulture. When I first took the leap into growing flowers, I was initially quite worried about how that would fit into my family life. You know, I've got a young family and also a really busy career. What it actually meant is that every moment of spare time would be down here at the allotment. My son is 4. He loves to pick my flowers. If I turn my back, he will have picked the flower that I was saving for something really special. His favourite thing to do is to try and find flowers of every colour of the rainbow. One of my favourite flowers are snapdragons, and I've been growing them since I started my flower journey. My favourite variety are the fluffy double types. They're called Madam Butterfly, and my favourite colour is cherry bronze. So they start off as a really bright, beautiful pink and fade out to a coral peach at the end. A flower that I recommend for beginners would be Achillea, particularly a shade called Colorado. So that comes in all of these lovely pastel colours, lots of soft yellows and pinks, and you also get some apricots and lilacs too. It's really easy to grow by seed. It's a perennial, so it'll come back every year for you, and it also flowers in its first year. Before I started gardening and growing flowers, I didn't feel that this was a space that I necessarily belonged in. I didn't always see people like me, in terms of age and cultural background, reflected in mainstream horticulture and gardening. Despite evidence to the contrary, I still don't feel like I fit in. Even though I'm sat here now surrounded by beautiful flowers, there'll always be a voice in the back of my head that tells me that, you know, this was a fluke. It was just luck that I managed to grow all of these things. And I think some of that is about a lack of diversity in the industry. Gardening can be really expensive, so I'm on a mission to save as much money as possible by saving my own seeds. This is my sweet pea wall. I've got lots of different varieties that I'm growing. Every year I'll grow old favourites and I trial new varieties as well. I'm labelling up some of the flowers now while they're in full bloom, so when they die back, I won't be struggling to remember which colours are which. I use red string for this because I use a lot of twine in the garden, and I just find that by the time everything's died back, it can be really hard to differentiate between what's tying in and what's the plant labels. So the one that I've put a label on here is Juliet, and I really want to save a seed for that because I think it's a very good all-rounder. You can use it in lots of different colour schemes, and it's got a beautiful scent as well. One of the most amazing things about gardening and having an allotment is that I've had the opportunity to make friendships that I might not have made if I hadn't been here on this site. My friend Linda is teaching me so much about growing, things that you might not read online, but she's been doing all of her life. She shares that knowledge with me. I can honestly say that gardening has changed my life.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about that was not just the way that obviously it empowered Sophia and changed her life, but also just how lovely her allotment looked. Now, this is an annual job that I slightly dread, and it's about pruning the summer raspberries. Summer raspberries, which are grown on a permanent support, produce their fruit on canes that were grown the previous year. Now, what that means in practice is that all these dried up canes, which have been tied into the framework, will not produce any fruit next year. Whereas all these new growths that are loose and haven't been tied up are going to carry next year's crop. Whereas the autumn raspberries produce their fruit on the current season's growth. And I will prune those in winter and cut the whole lot to the ground. And if you're not sure which your raspberries are, if they produce fruit in June and July, they are summer fruiting raspberries. If they go on producing fruit in any quantity in August, September, and even October, they are autumn fruiting raspberries. So I've untied the old canes that produce this year's fruit, and now I need to remove them. Now, you don't cut them halfway down. They need to go right down to the ground. Summer raspberries need support. I've got wires here, and I'm going to tighten that. These expansion hooks are a very good idea. When you put them in, though, remember to open them out fully. We'll tie this onto the end, like that, just with a very simple slip knot. Go like that. There are two ways of doing this. You either tie each one individually with a separate piece of twine, or you weave it round them. Ideally, for each plant, you have about half a dozen equally sized, very strong, very straight, vigorous new shoots. And in a wet year, with healthy plants, that's what will happen. However, in a very dry year like this year, those are both short in height and short in number. So the shorter canes won't reach the top, but can be tied in to the lower layers of the wire, because they won't go on growing anymore now. I know that there will be some saying, I had no idea that growing raspberries was so complicated. I don't think I'll bother. Don't be put off, because fresh raspberries from your garden on a July day is one of life's great treats. if I'm looking concerned, it's because I have just discovered the box tree caterpillar, which is starting to eat the very few box plants that we've got left here at Longmeadow. We had box blight in this garden very seriously about 10 years ago and dug up almost all our box, but we kept these box plants in pots raised up off the ground, so there was lots of ventilation. And ventilation is a really important key in controlling box blight. And I thought there was no box tree caterpillar in this part of the world, but clearly there is. And what they're doing is, unlike blight, where you get this mold and the leaves seem to disintegrate and fall off, here they're being eaten. You're getting droppings there, lots of droppings. You get little bits of what look like cobwebs wrapping around them, and the leaves turn brown and fall off. There is no sign of any actual caterpillars at the moment, so I will delay my response until next spring, when I will consider the organic options. However, I will repot all these, and that will give them a boost and improve their general health, so they are in a better position to respond to caterpillar attack. Now, not all insects are bad. In fact, we know that a really healthy insect population is essential to a healthy garden. And Frances went down to Cornwall to visit some gardens that have been encouraging as much diversity of insects as possible, particularly pollinating insects, using a brand new piece of technological innovation.
We often think of gardens as spaces for people, and we grow the plants that we do because we love them and they make us feel happy. But we also know that our gardens can provide a vital role for insects and all the other creatures that visit them. But how would it be if we designed our gardens for pollinators rather than for people? And how would they even look?
Well, thanks to the collective minds of artists, ecologists and gardeners, technology is pushing the boundaries with how we could be designing our beds and borders.
And here is the clever bit that allows us gardeners to get involved. The Pollinator Pathmaker project is an online tool that designs planting schemes for us from the perspective of pollinators and for the benefit of those pollinators, and yet creates beautiful and bold planting schemes. How amazing is that?
This is the brainchild of artist Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg. Her first pioneering design was planted at the Eden Project to learn how successful this technology-driven project would be.
So Daisy, tell me about this project, because it's your idea, isn't it?
It's not really gardening, it's an artwork for insects. And it started as a commission for a sculpture about the pollinator decline. So we think about pollinators as bees, but they're also moths and wasps and beetles and ants. The key here is that the gardens are designed to maximise diversity of species across the year. Many people might find the idea of using technology to design the garden strange, and that's really the point here. It's saying, well, why do we design gardens? Who are they for?
How does it actually work?
I decided to make an algorithm to sort out all the plants in our database and arrange those plants to suit the greatest diversity of insects. So once you choose your garden conditions, you press Create My Garden, and then it will give you a planting list, a planting plan, and then you get ready to go.
The project is gaining momentum and has grown wings. 30 miles away, in the village of Constantine, the locals have joined this valuable research and have been busy planting their own pollinator patches and logging their results.
So this is your algorithm-designed border.
Yeah.
Are you pleased with it?
So pleased with it. It's so much more than we thought it was going to be. Yeah, the colours are beautiful, the different heights are really interesting. Yeah, really, really pleased with it.
And have you seen lots of pollinators?
Tons of pollinators.
So many.
Yeah.
So many more than I expected, actually. It's been amazing to realise how many different pollinators are out there and actually how important it is to have something like this to support them.
Yeah.
It sort of speaks for itself when you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daisy teamed up with Dr. Chris Kaiser Banbury, an ecologist from Exeter University, to look at the impact the project is having on pollinators.
So, Chris, what's brought this here?
We were looking for an example, a microcosm that represents different parts of our landscape in the UK. Because gardens are not individual patches. They're only separated by a little fence to the neighbouring garden, and that forms a network across the entire village. I'm new to this gardening world, but I think I've come from this realisation that we can't only manage and improve our natural landscape, we also have to use what each of us have to enable us, empower us to try to stem this decline in pollinators. Gardening is a magical tool for that.
I've seen a few of these gardens now and I wasn't really sure what to expect. I mean, this is obviously a sunny spot, and so it's full of sun-loving species. There's stachys, there's erysimum that can cope with that bright sun. But what also has happened is, I think by accident, there's a sort of harmony of the colour palette. So there's the purples and the silvers and a huge, tall verbascum there that really contrasts beautifully with that. And the spikes are repeated. I love the liatris, which is just about to start flowering here. Clearly, they're working for pollinators, but do they work from a human eye? I think they do.
Before I leave the village, there is another garden to take a closer look at.
This is such a beautiful front garden. It really stops you in your tracks as you walk down this road. It's not conventional. It's not what you'd expect to see in a front garden, but with the fruit trees that were obviously here already and this lovely pollinator planting, it looks really, really beautiful.
Elfie and her family joined the research project in early spring, and now, with Exeter University academics, monitor the pollinator movements.
I'm guessing you're quite pleased with how this has turned out.
Yeah, I mean, back in February, this was a mud patch with a grid on it.
I really like the teasels. They're in their perfect little moment, and then all the silver of the stachys, and the gaura is beautiful, and it's just very kind of like tonal. It's almost like designery. And I can see your children there. Are they getting involved a lot with helping with this little project?
Yeah, they are. They're very enthusiastic. They kind of have been from the beginning. And then now what we're doing is spending a lot of time kind of just spotting what's out here together, tracking the tagged bees as well.
I heard them shouting about a tagged bee when we came in.
We just found number 53, he's come back again.
There we go. So you're able to see exactly how individuals are moving around the whole village as well.
Yeah, we have a WhatsApp group between the community and everyone goes, I saw pink 53, or this one's come up, or we share pictures of what we've seen, which is exciting.
Having heard all about this, I'm going to give it a go with my garden and see what it comes up with. 10 by 9 is partial shade, sheltered. Let's see what it does. Ooh, that's nice. So there we go. It's not far off what I've done. So looks like I've got lots of echiums and aquiledias, lots of angelicas, blues and yellows, which is actually what I've already got in my garden. Now we can look and see what it looks like through an insect size. So those blue echium flowers look really, really vibrant. So you can really imagine what an insect will see. I like it. I really like it. One of the things that I've been really struck by with this whole project is what an equaliser it is, how many different people are involved in it, all ages, you know, all experiences of gardening as well. Some people who know what they're doing, and then some children who have never done it before, and maybe this is creating new gardeners. I think it's a really welcoming project for, obviously, pollinators and for all the community, and that's really important.
I confess that I have problems applying an app to gardening, which for me is so hands-on and direct experiencing and not with technology. However, I have to say that if it takes an app to get people involved, to get them fascinated and to share it with friends and neighbours, then it's got to be a good thing. Now, I love collecting seed and I do as much as I can from the garden, but I have been collecting some seeds recently, which is a new development for me, which are tree seeds and growing trees from seed. Now, behind me is a tree called the goat horn willow. Quite rare and unusual. And I planted it in the garden, and then I looked it up, and I saw that it does flower, but very often not for decades. Then blow me if this didn't flower. I'd only had it for 3 years. So I enjoyed the flowers, and then following the flowers, the seed pods were fantastic. It's what gives it its name, Chinese goat horn. And of course I kept some seeds and sowed them. I have now, 2 years on, a dozen really healthy young saplings of the goat horn willow. That's so exciting. That's such a thrill. So growing trees from seed is a really viable option, as well as being hugely rewarding. Now, as it happens, I planted a tree in the garden, I think about sort of 26, 27 years ago. And this year, it has produced its first seed. It's not a rare tree. In fact, you could say it's the archetypal British tree. But I want to collect that seed and sow it. This is an oak tree, Quercus robor. It was given to me, as it was to all the guests, at the wedding of friends of ours. And now it's grown already into a fairly large tree. And this year, for the first time, it's produced seed, which of course are acorns. And I'm going to collect up these acorns, which are quite small. What you can see is they're mainly green, but also I've got some brown ones, which are more familiar. But brown acorns have dried up and they will not germinate. That's no good for seed. For seed, we want these fresh green ones, which basically means collecting them within the first few weeks of them falling to the ground. And then they can be sown and grown. I'm going to pop these in here for the moment. I'm just using ordinary compost. They don't need any special treatment. Preparing some pots. You could do this in big plugs, but they need to be reasonably deep. Not all of them are going to germinate, but I would say you could expect at least 50% success. So you need to take them out of the cup, like that, and just push them in to the compost. And I'm going to sow them 3 to a pot. They need to be pushed in the right way around. That's the base, where the roots are going to come from, and that's the top, where the shoot will come from. This is something that I remember doing with my children, and I certainly will do with my grandchildren. When they get to about 5 or 6, they can appreciate the relationship between these little acorns and a great big oak. And it's magical. It's part of the wonder of nature. And of course, there is nothing that you can grow in Britain that supports wildlife with such diversity or such success as a mature oak. Cover them over. Now, these need to be watered and kept moist. If the soil dries out, the acorn will dry out and it won't germinate. And as soon as it has a pair of true leaves that look like oak leaves, you can take them out of these pots, repot them individually, grow them on, and they can be either planted in the garden, given to friends, given to a school, or if you're lucky enough and have access, you can plant them and start to create new woodland. Now, this connection with nature in all its forms in our gardens is something that has become increasingly important and thankfully increasingly popular. And that's particularly true of young gardeners coming to it and long may that continue. And we're going to visit the garden of a young gardener in North Somerset.
I've always loved gardening. I love wildlife, so it was all about, for me, kind of bringing wildlife into the garden. If you look inside of my houseplants, you'll see that a lot of them are dying off. I'm not a green-fingered person at all. So I really needed my garden to sort of look after itself. My name's Chris Staghorn, and this is my pocket wilderness garden in the heart of Weston-super-Mare. Really, my garden has to thrive on benign neglect. That's what rewilding effectively does. It's creating this low-maintenance garden, largely with perennials. They'll come back year after year, and they'll look lovely, and it will just get better and better over time. I think it's really important that people understand that rewilding isn't this kind of exclusionary thing, which is only for big landowners. It's something that you can do in a really small space. We moved in late 2018, and the garden really was not at all how I wanted it, but I could see the potential. I saw a few years ago this amazing video of a garden in Oregon where they trapped all of the rainwater as it came down the gutter and created this rain garden outside, so that instead of it going into the sewer or onto the street, all of the rain went into this rain garden and slowly filtered into the ground. I thought, what a great idea. So I'd effectively done the same thing here with most of the water coming off the roof. So it goes down the gutter into a water butt. From that water butt goes into a bog system, filters it, and then heads out into the pond. It's like a big sponge. The reason I love it is there's so many different plants and invertebrates and stuff here. The closer you look at it, the more there is going on. So you've got this common yellow sedge here, got these sphagnum species, haircap moss. We've got ragged robin here, lovely pink flowers, and even this tiny little willow here. Maintaining this space and keeping it looking natural does take a little bit of work, but it feels like meditation. You come in with a pair of tweezers and take out any plants which are in the wrong place, because you leave a bog in a context like this and it will swiftly get overwhelmed with terrestrial plants which will come in. So sphagnum moss, which is this stuff here, amazing stuff, it slowly decomposes into peat at the bottom and creates about 1 millimetre of peat every year. Now, in a wild habitat, this is a fantastic carbon sink. Obviously, on a garden scale, it's not really going to do much, but it's still cool to think that in my garden, I am actually, reducing the amount of carbon which is emitted into the atmosphere by kind of sequestering it on a small scale. The pond is really the heart of this wildlife garden. There's so many different species in here. Everything from damselflies to dragonflies to frogs, and there's a lot of stickleback fish which are perfect for keeping the mosquitoes down. So in the garden we do have weeds. I know that, many people would look at this garden and say, well, all of this is weeds. There are plants like this, the broadleaf willow herb over here, which people would consider a weed. I look at it and think, what a beautiful plant. And next to it here, bramble, same thing. What a lovely thing to come into the garden. It has flowers, it has fruits. But what I do consider a weed in this garden is this grass, which as soon as you start getting grass in an area, it just takes over. So I'm removing this grass from this patch of fern. Unfortunately, that meant getting my feet wet because I couldn't reach over. So a few years ago, when I started learning about rewilding, I discovered the potential of native plants and how they've been on our island for, 20,000 years. They've evolved alongside all of the invertebrates, the insects, the birds, and they don't just provide pollination, things like this oxeye daisy here. They're also providing leaves for food and other resources. Behind me is the woodland edge, the woodland garden. You can see that the leaf cutter bees have been busy cutting holes in leaves and then taking them over to the front garden and using the bee hotel and putting these little leaves into the bee hotel for their larvae, which will eat them and come out next year. The thing about buying native plants is you don't always get what you're expecting. I ordered blackthorn, I actually got cherry plum. Cherry plum is very similar to blackthorn, It has the same spring flowers, which are great for biodiversity. It has summer fruits, which aren't sloes, but instead of these lovely little plums. And, you know, it's a happy surprise, happy accident, because these things, they're absolutely delicious. We got a trail cam on the tree back there, so we've got some lovely shots of some of the wildlife which is coming to the garden. We do get badgers, we get foxes too. What's lovely about that is it feels like it's reclaiming this space, like it's a patch of nature, and we're sharing this patch of nature. We're kind of embracing the fact that the garden is coming back to its wilder state. So this is the wildflower lawn. Underneath this garden is a lot of concrete, and on top of that concrete is a very thin layer of pretty poor quality soil, which I'd excavated from under the concrete. So that means that this soil, because it's really poor quality, is really good for wildflowers. Right now you've got the teasels, which are just coming into flower. Later in the year, they'll be great for seed. And behind me, something which you might not necessarily think of as a wildflower in a wildflower lawn, is this old man's beard, which is Clematis vitalba. And this clematis, it kind of works its way out into the lawn and kind of weaves its way through all the other plants and eventually becomes kind of part of this wildflower lawn. It's beautiful flowers and beautiful foliage too. And then we come to ragwort. Now, ragwort is a bit of a thorny issue. It is poisonous to livestock. Now, I didn't plant this one. It came in from the lane next door, self-seeded. But the thing about ragwort, it is fantastic for biodiversity. You know, you've probably seen the cinnabar moth caterpillars with their kind of orange and black pajamas. It supports so many different things. It's this beautiful yellow flower, and I love having it in the garden. The wildflower lawn is a very low-maintenance part of my garden. Mainly, all we do is we cut it once per year in September after all of the wildflowers have set seed. But the other thing we can do is we go in, collect the seeds so that we can spread them elsewhere. I have autism spectrum disorder, which means that my mind can be very busy from time to time, and I need a space which can connect with it and kind of allow me to relax. And I find that formal gardens don't really do that for me. I really need something which is very intricate, very complex, and has something new whenever I come to it, which allows me to kind of really focus and slow my brain down and relax. That's what this garden does for me. I love being in wilderness, and I really wanted to create a bit of wilderness on my doorstep.
That kind of sump garden, taking rainwater and then redistributing it around the garden, is a great idea. If you're going to use sphagnum moss, just one word of warning, that do make sure you source it from a sustainable source. Now, what I'm doing here is part of the process of encouraging my amaryllis plants, hippeastrum, to reflower. These all flowered last winter and spring. And then when they finished flowering, I cut off the flowering stem, brought them into the greenhouse, and I have watered and fed them regularly ever since. So they grow really luxuriant foliage, because it's the foliage that will feed the bulb for next year's flower. But before they flower again, they need to go dormant. And that's the stage that we're coming to now. So I'm going to take these plants, put them somewhere cool and dark, and leave them there for a couple of months. Those will now stay there in the dark, not watered, not fed. I'll check them every few weeks. and the foliage will gradually die back. Then round about the end of November, beginning of December, I will bring them out. The bulbs by then will be bare, water them, feed them, give them some warmth, give them some light, and hopefully new flower stems will grow early next year. Right, that's one little job done. Here are your jobs for the weekend. Pears should not be left to ripen on the tree because they rot and fall. But pick them, carefully lifting the fruit, and it'll be ready when it comes away in your hand. Handle them with great care because they can bruise easily. Then place the unripe fruit on a sunny windowsill, and they should ripen in about a week's time. And as soon as they're soft to touch, eat them. As agapanthus finish flowering, they form seed heads, and these take away from the rhizome that should produce next year's flowers. So cut off the flowering stem at the base, and then water and feed the plant, and repeat this weekly for the next month. Propagating house leeks is very easy. Mix up a very free-draining mix using horticultural grit on equal measure with peat-free compost. Carefully detach a young pup from the parent plant with a bitter stem, insert it into the compost, and it will quickly form roots. They're completely hardy, so can go outside, but do make sure that they don't become sodden with rainwater. Now this is actually rose pruning, but it's very simple because in September, a really good plan is to take shrub roses, and particularly old shrub roses, and just give them a light trim with a pair of shears so they're uniform, and just round it slightly. And that does two things. The first thing is, the obvious thing is, it tidies them up a bit, but it also stops the potential for root rot, because when you get these shrubs, particularly if they've grown very vigorously, in winter, in a winter storm, they can rock. The top acts like a sail, and the damage is done underneath the ground. You can't see it, but the roots are rocked, and that means they get broken and torn, and therefore the plant suffers when it starts to grow again next spring. This is one of the jobs that I really associate with this time of year. It's a September job. It's all part of that process of celebrating the season. Garden still looks great. The light is wonderful at this time of year. But there's no doubt about it. We are leaving summer behind and preparing ourselves and moving into winter. And that process that covers the next couple of months actually can be very beautiful. And you want to make the most of it, as well as looking after the garden. And I'm afraid that's all we've got for today. I'll see you back here at Longmeadow in 2 weeks' time. So until then, bye-bye.